At this time, I'd like to bring into open session the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee for Wednesday, January 18th, 2017. Before we go into our regular agenda, I need to have a motion for the executive session. Patty.
Madam Chair, I move that we enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding this matter in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the committee with the intent to return to open meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. And it's a roll call vote. So made by Patty, second by Dave. Barbara? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we're just going to be adjourned until we go into executive session, then we'll come back into open session. Okay, we're back now into open session. And going back onto our agenda, we have action of the minutes of the open meeting of December 21st, 2016. Mr. Bucko.
I move that we approve the open meeting minutes of December 21st, 2016.
Is there a second? Second by Dan. Any discussion, corrections, additions that anyone has seen? Seeing there's none, all those in favor of the motion on the table? Okay, and it passes unanimous. Thank you. And also, Paul?
I vote that we approve and retain the executive session minutes of December 21st, 2016.
Okay, second, and second by Dan. Any discussions? All those in favor of the motion on the table? And it passes unanimous. Thank you. The next one is educational policy, and we first have is the approval of DECA's overnight field trip to DECA Massachusetts Career Development Conference, March 9th through 11th, 2017 in Boston, and that is also in your packet. Paul?
So as is our custom, I move that we vote to approve the DECA overnight field trip for the Massachusetts Career Development Conference in March. Second.
Second by Dan. Any discussion? Questions? All those in favor of the motion on the table? And passed unanimous. Thank you. The next item we have is the approval of the Model UN's overnight field trip to the UMass Model United Nations Conference, March 10th through 12th, 2017 in Amherst, Massachusetts. Paul?
So I move that we vote to approve the Model UN's overnight field trip to UMass Model UN Conference in March in
Dan,
Amherst.
thank you. Dan is going to second. Any discussions or comments? All those in favor of the motion on the table? And it passes unanimous. Thank you. The next item, now we are under new business.
Madam Chair, I'd like to request that we move item 3 on the agenda, ratify agreement with Algonquin Regional Teachers Association, forward as item 1 under new business.
Is that fine with the committee members just to change that order tonight? Okay, thank you. So we have ratify agreement with Algonquin Regional Teachers Association. Mr. Bucka?
So I move that we unanimously vote by roll call to ratify the agreement between the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee and the Algonquin Regional Teachers Association.
Second.
Second by Dan. It's a roll call. Barbara?
Yes.
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and it passes unanimous.
Thank you. I would like to make note that I believe we have a representative from the Algonquin Regional Teachers Association in the audience. He is standing. So, and it's Steve Godbout.
Steve Godbout, I was a member of the negotiations team. I would like to thank the school committee for your terrific support along the way. I'd like to thank the Algonquin administration, especially Tom Mead, for all of his support. We truly have a great school due to our leadership team and support from the central office. We have terrific students. It's truly a community and school effort. So I'm grateful to the school committee, Superintendent Johnson, for all your support. And it was genuinely a seamless and productive and positive collaborative effort. And our membership is entirely grateful to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate your support very much. Any comments from any board members? Christine?
I'd just like to echo Mr. Godbout's comments. This was my first opportunity to negotiate with the team and with the school committee, and it was an amazing experience. The level of professionalism, the amount of enthusiasm for the work that they do each and every day, for appreciating the district and their participation as teachers and educators in our school community was really validating as a committee and all the work that we do and we do on behalf of the teachers, but also to really appreciate the richness of conversations we had about not just the contract, but educational issues, and to listen to the degree to which they really respect our community and thoroughly enjoy working here at Algonquin Regional. So thank you very much. There were a lot of meetings, and most of them were quite joyful.
Thank you all.
Sure.
I'd just like to make one comment. I also thank you for your leadership for the Teachers Union, and also for what you do, and please take it back to the whole entire membership for what you do as the leaders in education for this school, because without you and your dedication, it wouldn't be the successful school, and because it's a successful school, it makes our job even easier. And another thing makes our job easier is that as we go into the town meetings and look at the budget for the next fiscal year, sometimes we're held up because we have contracts that are just tentative or that are not signed yet, and we can go in with such a positive tone to town meetings knowing that we have the teacher's contract for Algonquin settled. So you have made our job as school committee even easier for what you have done. So please take back all of our great sentiments to the teachers and thank them for everything they do every day for the students.
So, thanks, Ms. Franklin. It's a privilege and honor to work here and serve the students in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next under new business is the English language learners update from Rhoda Webb.
I think we have a presentation by guidance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I really messed up on Rhoda.
Rhoda's here
Rhoda, you can
too.
sit back. I'm sorry, the whole order. So we have the presentation by the guidance department from Algonquin.
Yeah, well represented this evening, I think. Always interesting.
Yes, we better. I had a question I had written down for the.
That's our audience.
You guys look like you're ready to sing a chorus. You have your music before you and you're, no, you're not going to sing tonight?
I think I left my thumb drive.
Awesome.
We did all right so far.
Good evening. Is this working okay?
That's how it works.
Yeah. Pardon? Turn it on? What did you say? I'm sorry. On the bottom. Connor, can you?
I did turn it on. Is it not working?
Sounds like. I don't know. It's working.
It's good.
It's good.
It's good. She said,
It's okay?
yes.
She can hear us? Yeah, perfect, thank you. All right, so good evening. My name is Lisa Connery. I'm the Director of Guidance here at Algonquin. We're excited to be here tonight to present a State of Guidance address. Like Charlie Baker and Marty Walsh, we too are focused on improving education and addressing substance abuse and mental health issues. I'm really pleased to have all of the counselors joining me this evening. I'm going to take a minute and allow them to introduce themselves before we get started.
Jason Lassard, I'm a guidance counselor here.
Andrea Hodgkin, and also guidance counselor. Kate Mulcahy, guidance.
Deb Gutterman, school adjustment.
Connor Brosnan, guidance.
Dave Bregley, I'm in guidance.
Hi, I'm Pam Mackey, and I'm a guidance counselor here.
I'm Becca Haberman, and I'm also a guidance counselor.
All right, thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys joining me here tonight to present to the school committee, but mostly I really appreciate all of your hard work. You guys offer tremendous support to our students and families here at Algonquin, and I just wanted to thank you for that, for being here and for all of the hard work that you do with our students each and every day. One of the keys to our work with students is the support of administration. We're very fortunate to have the necessary resources and support to do our work. So thank you all for helping us to help our students. A special thanks to Tom Mead for his support of our important work. He always has a keen eye on the well-being of our students. Our caseloads truly reflect the district's commitment to supporting the developmental needs of our students. Counselors currently work with students in grades 9 to 12, and each has approximately 193 students on their caseload. The 9 to 12 counselor assignment and caseload sizes really help in forming stronger relationships with our students. As counselors, our work falls within 3 domains: academic, career, and social emotional development. Tonight we'll review the work we do within these 3 domains. Before I hand things off to Kate Mulcahy to talk about academic development, I'd like to update you on our current collaboration with Cambridge Institute. This year was our first year of welcoming a student from mainland China. Her name is Jessie. She's a senior. She's doing quite well here at Algonquin, and has transitioned nicely. Becca Haberman's been working with her this year, so thank you, Becca, for that. We're really excited to continue this collaboration with Cambridge. We will begin the process here shortly of reviewing applications for the upcoming school year. So we are very hopeful that we will have more than just one student joining us this year. Last year we were a little late in the process as we went through getting approval to accept F1 visa students. So now that that is behind us and we're well versed in the process and we know exactly what we need to do, we're hopeful that we'll have more students joining us this year, but we'll be beginning that process here in the next month or so. Again, our focus will continue to be on accepting juniors, but of course we will consider seniors, based on our graduation requirements and the work that they've previously done at their school. So we'll do that on an individual basis, but we are very hopeful to have maybe five to 6 students this coming year from that program. Okay, so at this point I'm going to turn it over to the counselors and they can talk a little bit about the academic, career, and social emotional work that we do here at Algonquin. There we go, we'll do it this way.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about academics and how we play a role with that. So we obviously do a lot of scheduling with the students, and we help students with their current schedules. We build student schedules for new students, and we also meet with our students about course selection for the upcoming year. We work with our students with 4-year plans, so we help map out their required and elective courses so they can see which different courses may fit into their schedule over their time here at Algonquin. In terms of academic concerns, we often consult with teachers and hear their concerns with our students. We see, what supports could be in place for them that we already have here. We often recommend outside tutors or peer tutors for our students, depending on, what type of help they're looking for and also their schedule. We coordinate student 504s, so we coordinate those meetings. We receive feedback from our teachers and how they're currently doing in their classes. We build a plan that will help students be successful in the classroom, and we coordinate meetings each year and revise their plan. So we meet with the students, their parents, and the teachers. Counselors also participate in IEP meetings set up through special ed, and we just track where they are in terms of graduation, and also talk about their transition planning and how we help students transition from high school and eventually to their post-secondary plans. Next up, there you are, Becca.
Thank you very much. All right, I did make notes, but I never use them. So in guidance, we do a lot to help the kids get through high school and then transition to whatever they want to do. Most of our students do go to post-secondary education. In order to do that, we set up a bunch of different workshops. We're going to get into some of the freshman workshops we do a little bit later. For the sophomores, it's really our time to start helping them think about what kind of careers or college majors they might want to do. We use a system called Naviance, and on that, we use something called the Do What You Are, which is based on the Myers-Briggs personality profile. We also use a career interest inventory. So those two things, they do a lot of work on answering questions, and it comes out with a full, robust sort of information about what their interests are, which might lead them to look at various courses here that we offer at Algonquin, because we offer so many great courses, as well as what kind of career fields. We look at broad career fields as well as typical college majors. After sophomore year, right after the winter holiday, we start our junior college planning. And the one thing that we've started to do in the past couple of years is move it much earlier. So instead of waiting till March to do college planning, we start it right in January so we can break it down for them so they're not so overwhelmed. So actually right now we just finished our first workshop. We'll be doing a second workshop on how to identify schools and what kind of visits to do. And within that, we also do mock interviews. We have an intern this year, Amy Curran, as well as our career resource coordinator, who is Linda Hutchins, and they'll do mock interviews. So we tell the kids, before you go on a college campus and before you do an interview, make sure that you have it set up here so you can practice. And it's really good feedback after the interview. Linda Hutchins will sit down and go through what things they might want to focus on later. And then after junior year, we get them off in the summer with a good list of what they need to do. So when they come back senior year, we start right off. After we do a little course scheduling to get the kids off, we start off with senior college planning and then do financial aid nights. So that's all our sort of college stuff. On top of that, in September, October, we do a college fair. We had close to 100 colleges come this year, and we invite the juniors and seniors, and we have reps. We treat them to dinner so they like to come back, and they get one-on-one with our students. We also bring in each year close to 100 college reps who come and meet with students individually or in small groups. So we do a lot in terms of setting kids up to help find that right fit for college. But the other piece that's near and dear to my heart, as you know, Christine, is career. Because if you don't know what you want to do, I mean, it's great. You go to college, you could be like me and change jobs every 2 years till you end up at Algonquin. But career is big. And so one thing that Linda Hutchins and the CRC and Lisa Connery have been working on is setting up department-wide career days. The science department already does one, so we're working with other departments. We hope to do 2 this year with various departments where kids who might be in history or English will have people coming in talking about various careers within that umbrella. Linda is also setting up a career directory. She has put out information to all of our wonderful parents, as well as contacted various companies around the area, and we're now building a directory so we can help kids job shadow, do internships, and above and beyond that, we also get calls all the time for companies like Wegmans and Stop and Shop and all these wonderful companies looking for kids to come work. So we have a jobs book as well. I think I kind of covered everything, and so now Connor's going to talk about something.
I'm going to talk about the social-emotional kind of aspect of our job. So although Algonquin is a high school and our main job is to educate students and prepare them for after high school, life after high school, there are some students that kind of the social-emotional aspect of whatever's going on in their life does get in the way, does kind of interfere with their ability to kind of learn in the classroom. So that is a large part of what we do throughout the day, is provide that support and make sure these kids are able to be successful within the classroom. We act kind of as case managers in a lot of cases, where we have a student who might be struggling for whatever reason, and we collaborate, communicate a lot with the teachers, the parents, administrators, and we're also kind of communicating with outside support. So if they have a therapist outside of the building, we might have a release to speak to them and kind of communicate with them in terms of the best way that we can support them within our building. Obviously, we're working with teenagers, so we do provide one-on-one counseling as needed. They might break up with a boyfriend, girlfriend. They might have gotten in a fight with their friends over Snapchat. These things happen. They might come down to us for a kind of quick, fixer-upper, and then they're back to class. We're part of the student assistance team, which meets once a week on Fridays. It's us, the administrators, adjustment counselors, school nurses. And basically, that's a group that gets together and we collaborate on individual cases. We work on some of the kind of bigger issues that our students might be facing. And it's a really great group, and a lot of good ideas have come out of it. We're also part of the crisis team. Crisis team is something that we hope we don't have to use very often. But obviously, if there is a situation that impacts the whole community, the school community, we do get together and we come up with the best way in order to provide support for our students, our teachers, everyone in the building, everyone in the community. And then we make counseling referrals. If we have a student who we see on a regular basis and maybe we feel they could use some outside support, we might contact their parents and give them a list of possible therapists in the area that might make sense for them. Another kind of stat here, the most recent Metro West Health Survey said that 35% of students reported that life is very stressful. We're experiencing that here at Algonquin for sure. So the guidance department, in kind of response to that, has put together a number of programs. We've got involved in some trainings, which we'll talk about in a second. But just a few of those, which we'll go over, are Day for Change, Break Free from Depression, DBT, which is a type of therapy we're involved in now, and then also our Access program. So I'm going to hand it off to Jason Lessard, I believe, who's going to talk about Day for Change.
Thank you. So, one of the initiatives the guidance department got behind was this program called Day for Change. And the whole department has really been working towards this one-day event over the last few years. So what is it? It's a half-day event for all 9th grade students. And the day is filled with highly interactive games, discussions, icebreakers, trust-building activities. And the games ultimately are supposed to, and they do help students break down stereotypes and labels, and ultimately make them realize they're more alike than different. They have more commonalities than they do differences. Okay, so the day also, our goals for Day for Change is for all the students at Algonquin to feel safe, loved, and celebrated. That is the ultimate goal for all the students at our school, to feel safe. No students deserve to feel alone throughout the day or isolated. And ultimately, the day is building connections with one another. It's also helping students become aware that they're more alike than different. It helps them increase self-esteem. It helps shift dangerous peer pressure to positive peer support. Reduces teasing, oppression, forms of violence. And it encourages students and adults that participate in the day to practice positive acts of change on a daily basis.
All right. So we actually started this 3 years ago, and we started very small. See how it would go. We did 67 freshmen. We got wonderful feedback from teachers. Just to share one thing, a teacher who really does not appreciate having kids out of the classroom for field trips actually said, "I want to comment on the fact that I have not participated in anything as moving as this day. It was the first time I felt it was worth it to be out of the classroom." So building off this excitement, we did double it. We had 121 freshmen the previous year, and then this year we did the entire freshman class, which was our goal of 350 students. We actually have Max Donahue here today, and he has participated twice now as a peer leader in the program. So with 350 freshmen, that required 50 adults, so 50 teachers. We pulled from teachers, nurses, school guidance counselors, adjustment counselors. We had special education aides. We had coaches, secretarial staff, librarians, a lot of different people. So we have, over these 3 years, have gotten a lot of buy-in, which has been great. Having such a large event like this, obviously, it's a big undertaking, and one of the things we needed to be careful with is minimizing the cost of subs. So Lisa Connery was excellent and actually did this whole matrix, this coverage matrix, so that we ended up only hiring 3 to 4 subs for that day. So the school was very supportive. Every year teachers have asked to participate, and the people who were not able to participate actually in Day for Change, they volunteered to cover each other's classes. So it worked out really well. Then I'm going to send this to Dave Breglio.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about our Break Free from Depression workshop. This is actually the second year we've done with the Break Free. It's for our freshman class, so this year we ran it after we did the Day for Change. It was originally created by Boston Children's Hospital. So they sent us a huge amount of information, and then the guidance staff got together, we collaborated, we cut it down so we could fit into our workshop mode, and then deliver it to the freshman class. The workshop includes a presentation, it includes a discussion component, and then a really strong piece of it is that there's a short film that Boston Children's created, and it features local Boston area high school students, and they are really candid and open about their battle with depression and their experience with suicide. Kids leaving it, so it's a really powerful film, and then afterwards we have a great discussion about it. What we're really trying to do with this workshop is have the talk about mental health issues, depression out in the open, and let students understand that it's a medical issue. There shouldn't be these negative stigmas attached to it. And if we can change the language around depression, then we feel that students are going to be more willing to come forward, reach out to trusted adults. So throughout the day, we do this workshop. Afterwards, we have them fill out information asking us to either if they need to check in with a guidance counselor, and we all had a lot of students come down and check in about either worries they had about themselves, worries they had about a friend. And that was really the goal of the workshop, is to, like I said, open those lines of communication, let them know what they should be doing if they are concerned about themselves or a friend, and that's find a trusted adult, parents, coach, guidance counselor, teacher, whoever that's going to be. So we walk them through all the different statistics around depression on the board here. So a big one here is, so 800,000 adolescents suffer from depression, and only 75% of them are going 75% of them go undiagnosed. So that's that stigma around depression, with adolescents not feeling comfortable coming forward if they are worried about themselves or a friend. Depression has led to school attendance issues, dropout rates, substance abuse. So this is definitely one of the more important workshops I think we do as guidance counselors throughout the year. And then also depressive disorders have that link to suicide. So whatever we can do to reach out early and get those students on our radar is just something that we really work hard to do. And now,
Hi. So the last thing I'm going to talk about in regards to things the guidance department's doing before I pass it off to Deb to discuss access is DBT. DBT is dialectical behavior therapy. We're collaborating with the Metro West Health Foundation for a grant for $25,000. And we're using that money to have the Bridge come in and actually give training to all the support staff, so guidance counselors, school adjustment counselors, nurses, school psychologists, on this specific type of therapy. So what is it? It's a form of cognitive behavior therapy, and it uses mindfulness, which you might have heard, that's kind of a buzzword right now. Uses mindfulness and teaching coping skills to help students better manage emotions. We are also training the staff in DBT. At our professional development day yesterday, we used part of that time to do a workshop so that the students are going to be using it and seeing it in the classroom as well. I will give you an example of one of the skills that we're trying to teach the children. So sometimes we'll get kids that come in our office and they're stuck and they can't go to class for whatever reason. Maybe they feel like everybody's looking at them, or usually it's kind of an irrational thought that they have, but as a teenager, that's a very real problem. So we validate that they're feeling that way, and then we ask them to think about it using their wise mind. So their wise mind is a combination of emotional and reasonable mind. And we kind of ask them to step back and analyze what the problem is and say, do you really think everybody's looking at you? Because they're probably just focused on themselves right now. And that can actually be very helpful. We've used a lot of these skills so far with the students. We're looking forward to seeing how it's going to be working in the classroom. We've got some ideas for having the teachers use it in the classroom. And so far, I would say it's been a very useful tool. Again, mindfulness, you've probably heard it on NPR. I actually saw the Time magazine when I was grocery shopping yesterday, and I said, wow, isn't this timely that, I'm going to be discussing this tonight to the school committee. It was in the Harvard Business Review talking about work-life balance. It's been in Newsweek. It's been, all over the place. I think you'll be hearing more and more about it. And we are on the forefront of it, using it to help our students to kind of have a more balanced life. And now I'm going to pass it off to Deb. Thanks, guys.
I just want to thank Lisa for inviting me to join you guys tonight. I think it's evident from everything that they've presented tonight that you guys do such awesome work, and it's just a pleasure to work with each and every one of you. So it's good to be here. We were here last year. Paul, Lisa, and I presented an introduction to the Access program, which is funded by the Metro West Health Foundation. I have some comments to make about it, to review some of the statistics, but I think first and foremost we want to show a video because it speaks very well to the program. We have this video thanks to our very own George Clark, students in the Access program and staff in the Access program. What is it, Lisa, about 5 minutes?
Yeah, I'll just play it for you.
So missing like 2 weeks of school like I did, it really sets you back, especially in high school because it's so fast paced. Then I would miss days of school because I would be depressed, and then I would come back and I'd be so overwhelmed again, so then I'd miss more school. It's just a vicious cycle of being overwhelmed and anxious and depressed.
So I had random stomach problems way back in 8th grade, and I was in and out of hospitals, and just a whole chaotic scene. Every year I get really sick and miss like 2 months of school. They would take me out of classes, always leave me in the bathroom, always leave me in the nurse. And I never felt connected to the school with teachers and stuff, and I was always out of class, so I didn't get like hangout time with my friends in school and stuff. It was really annoying to try to get back in and then missing so much, and then it was just kind of like a series of me catching up and then getting knocked back down and having to get back up again and trail behind and everybody.
I was struggling with stuff, and it kind of all crashed in like the beginning of freshman year, and I was put in treatment and I missed 2 months of school. You know, it's hard to, you know, say, bye, I'm going for a doctor's appointment, and then disappear for 2 months, and like nothing, like with no warning, no communication, nothing, and then suddenly you're back.
How come she got to leave school?
What happened?
Where's she been? Here's all your work. Good luck.
Over recent years, we've seen an increase in depression and anxiety among our students. Oftentimes, students may need to leave school for medical or psychiatric reasons. When that happens, what we've found is that their transition back to school can be really difficult in terms of the work they've missed. Oftentimes, prior to their hospitalizations, they were falling behind due to some of their difficulties. then to come back after missing a couple of weeks of school can create significant amount of stress. Due to this issue, we've created a program called the Access Program. The Access Program was designed to meet the needs of students returning from hospitalizations. It's a short-term program. It offers academic and emotional support. We have a full-time adjustment counselor in the room and a full-time tutor to meet the academic needs. We also invite teachers in on a regular basis, so there's a flow of information from classroom teachers to the tutor and to the students within the program.
Finally, this year, sophomore year, I missed a lot of school, talked to my guidance counselor, and then he introduced me to Access. I walked in, took me about 3 days to get comfortable, and then boom, started banging out a bunch of work. Ms. McNulty was helping me with all the teachers, communication, getting me to work. And then I still was continuing to miss school and a bunch of doctor's appointments, and I was really aggravating, especially for my parents. And then finally Ms. McNulty comes in, brings us all together into one group, has a whole meeting with everybody so we can finally get situated, make a plan. And then I got all the work, I'd start to do it, and it helps a lot.
Access really helped me come back and catch up on all my work and help me integrate back into my class and like with all my friends. Some days it's like the only reason like get my butt in school, and it helps my parents like deal with it and like communicate with like my teachers in the school and everything that's going on, and yeah.
To have the access support and was really helpful because they broke it down so I could manage it. They're like, you're going to do this day, and if I ever needed a mental break, it's really helpful. It really accommodates my my mental illness. It's okay that I said mental illness.
I think the video spoke rather nicely to the program, but I'll just reiterate some of the key points. Access is a transitional program, meaning that it's short-term. The goal is for each student to transition back into the classroom. The time that it takes is quite individual per student. We'll get to that in the next slide. We're also using Access as a preventive program. So some of the students that are in Access haven't necessarily been hospitalized, but we're using it as a preventive measure for students that may be experiencing difficulty emotionally with depression and anxiety and are having difficulty functioning in their regular classroom settings, and they need that extra support. And we've found that with that extra support, oftentimes they can avert a hospitalization because they can find a way to function and get themselves back into the classroom setting. As the video pointed out, there are many reasons why students may miss school, whether it be for psychiatric reasons or surgeries, medical reasons. And we do provide social and emotional support. We have a full-time academic tutor, Mary Ellen Wolf, and a full-time adjustment counselor, Sarah McNulty, and they're really a great team. The kids love them, and they're doing a great job reaching out to staff and to parents as well. Since the inception of last January, Access has supported 48 students. So some of the presenting issues are more of the psychiatric issues with mood disorders, anxiety disorders, depression, eating disorders. We also have many concussions and other medical issues. And there you see the grade level breakdown. So it's fairly even, as you can see. Access has serviced all 4 grade levels. 72% of the students are regular education students with no other supports, meaning they're not on 504 plans, they're not on individual education plans. And the length of participation varies. When we first planned out the Access program, we thought 2 weeks was going to be sufficient. And then as you get going with these programs, you realize that that's not necessarily the case at all. We have some students that have been there, 21% were more long-term, a good part of the school year. The good thing about that is if you look comparatively, many of those students weren't able to attend school. So to be in school, to feel connected, to still have those connections with their peers and their teachers, yes, they may not be back into the mainstream setting as quickly as we might have thought, but they're attending school regularly and feeling positive about it and getting academic support and academic progress. 55% of the students utilize the support for 1 term and 24% for a semester. So it's quite individualized. We often don't know. We kind of plan as we go. We review each case every 2 weeks to assess where they're at, and we make decisions as a team.
Thanks, Deb.
You're welcome.
So that's kind of guidance in a quick little snapshot. I know it didn't feel that quick as we were talking. And some of the new initiatives that we are bringing forward with our students, So we'd like to provide you with an opportunity. If you have questions about some of the work we're doing, if we can answer questions for you, we're happy to.
Any questions from committee members? I have one question, 2 questions really. On the break free from depression that you were talking about, what is the protocol that you take if a student comes to you first, which is wonderful, because a lot of students you're here all the time, so they'll come to you maybe before their parents. What is the protocol, though, that you have if a student is underneath the age of 18, whether or not a legal adult? How do you reach out to their parents?
So if there's any, this is for all the guidance counselors, if their kid ever approaches us and we have a worry, a concern for their safety or safety of anyone else in the building, then we pick up the phone and call the parents right away. We always tell the kids, and we're upfront with them, that if you share the information, we're going to call mom and dad. You're not in trouble, but we want to make sure you're safe. And that's always our first goal, is safety with the kids. So anytime there's any alarming things that parents need to know about, we pick up the phone and call them.
And then how do you do the education for parents on this? If parents would see something within their child, a depression, is there some way that you've educated the parents, or is it in the student handbook, something where they know how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, one of the things that we did offer this year that we didn't include into this slideshow was a parent presentation. We invited Larry Berkowitz from Riverside Trauma to come in and present to parents, and he did a fantastic job engaging the audience. I really wish we would have had more parents join us, but we did have quite a few parents, and it was wonderful. He talked about the signs of depression. He talked about how to talk with your child, you know, if you have concerns, and the importance of, you know, seeking out support. I think he did a fantastic job, you know, guiding our parents through that for us. So we did offer that this year for parents.
And then a follow-up question I have is for the Access program.
Yes.
Is there a referral process that parents are aware of? Or do you reach out to these students when you know they've been gone for a certain period of time?
I mean, anytime we have a student who's out for a long-term absence, we invite the parents to come in and have a meeting. So they're part of that process. You know, as we're kind of discussing what the return will look like and what the plan is for them to return, you know, we may or may not every student may need access, you know, but we definitely discuss that resource with them, and we offer that, and we map out a plan on how to help their child, you know, return to school. So we always ask for a meeting with the parents to come in, to sit down, to talk with us. We invite the nurses, we invite administration. We pull the whole team for that student together and really talk about what the day is going to look like for their student and how we can support them here at the school.
And then my last question on the Access program is, this data here is wonderful, but sometimes there's data that we don't see, and that is, and every student is individual. But I was wondering, do you see that you've been able to capture some of these students that can stay, that would, their attendance rate would be higher because they're not staying at home, that they're coming in? Is that one benefit, and are there any other ones that doesn't show up in this data that you have seen more on the effective mode?
We're in the process of collecting quite a lot of data to be in compliance with the grant, many along the lines of what you just mentioned, not just attendance, but we do pre and post tests of kids coming into the program. One of the measures is connectedness to the school. That's a big one in terms of prevention work. We've done a lot of work with the school in general around making connections and the importance of that. So we're in the process of compiling quite a lot more data than what you see here.
Okay.
So we do have a formal scale that we use,
You
the
do?
adolescent functional scale, yes. That does different assessments when they first enter the program, and then we revisit the assessment throughout and show significant improvement.
That's wonderful. It's a wonderful program. I mean, the data, and just going from the number of students that you have been able to assist since January of 2016. Any other questions? Oh, Paul.
Yeah, well, first, a terrific presentation, thanks very much. While you have the mic in your hand, it's budget time, we're preparing budgets. Is there anything that you don't have that you'd like to make a pitch for right now?
Are you sure you want to ask that?
I know.
You only get the mic once a year, so your timing is actually pretty good. You supported enough with?
Well, I mean, I think,
asked for?
what's that?
Are you supported enough for?
I think, Paul, we are very well supported, and we are very grateful and very appreciative for all the support we do have. When we look at other area community schools and the supports that they have, I would say that we are very well supported, and it very much allows us, like I said at the beginning, you know, to build stronger relationships with our students, to be more proactive and preventive, you know, than reactive. So I do think that we are very grateful and appreciative. We enjoy what we do. We're happy to be here, and I mean, we thank you for asking us that.
I'll just say something quickly. The Access program has been a godsend to the guidance department. We would sometimes have students come in and we wouldn't know where to put them. You know, we don't want to put them in just a general study. There's no support there. And we would be the point people collecting the work and then giving it to the student. But there was no, we couldn't put them in a learning center. Maybe there was no room in a focus study. And this has been an amazing resource for us, having these two pairs of hands that both Sarah and Mary Ellen that have helped us in supporting these kids. I've seen, again, we're collecting more data, but I've seen kids that have felt alienated at school come into this program and have find their tribe, and it's been really amazing. So I have to say that this has been wonderful, and thank you for your support.
Dan?
So I'll echo Mr. Butka's comments. I think this was a wonderful presentation and clearly a great group of professionals that we have here at Algonquin. In my company, marketing is usually the first to get cut in fiscally challenging times. I have heard over the years that sometimes then guidance, is a target. Clearly, you can see the benefits to students in having a very strong guidance department. So I'm glad you asked that question. If there's things that you need, we want to be able to support. We get a lot of presentations about the wonderful AP programs that we have here and how students really excel and all that's great stuff. But there's a lot of students, as your numbers show, that don't have, that have issues that are, causing them not to be able to excel at a level that they and their parents would like to see. Those students deserve every opportunity as well. So it's wonderful to see this. I'm in the Army Reserve. When I came back from Iraq, there was that stigma of PTSD and post-traumatic stress disorder. And the Army's come a long way in letting soldiers know that it's okay to say that you have an issue. And it's wonderful to see your department encouraging students to feel that same way, that it's okay to say, raise your hand and say, I've got something here, I need some help. And, and I commend all of you. I've had, most of my experiences with Becca, and she's heard this before, but I'll say it again. When my oldest son went through here, we had great experiences with Becca. She's outstanding. And when there was a realignment of counselors based on last name, and we suddenly lost Becca, and my wife was going to do everything she could to hold on to Becca. She was going to call Mr. Mead, whoever she needed to call, and it ended up not working out for us. We ended up getting another counselor who also was outstanding. All right, so and again, so we've got more Calendas coming through, so we look forward to working with Becca again, but we can clearly see all of them are wonderful professionals, so thank you.
Thanks. I think one of the keys to recognize is that, we have our students and you have your children for a short period of time. So we kind of take the, focus of, we need to support them. We need to help them now. We need to make sure that they're well. As they progress through life, they head off to college, they leave, their parents' home and stuff. So, we're very appreciative of the supports that we have because it really does allow us to help students and to put those supports in place and really ensure overall wellness. You're right, we're doing a great job with our curriculum and our AP courses, and we have fantastic teachers, but I think it's important that we make sure that all of our students are able to access that and that they're well, because they will be leaving us in a couple years. So, we're very appreciative of all the support that we do have here. And these guys are great.
Christine?
Thanks. I just wanted to thank you for an amazing presentation. I sat through all of what you had to share this evening and had so many thoughts, but just couldn't stop smiling because I feel your enthusiasm for the role that you play in the children's life each and every day. And I think what's amazing is that each time you present, we gain a deeper appreciation for really how complex it is to be a student today and how many roles you play guiding them, not as guidance counselors, but through their journey over the 4 years and beyond. So, thank you for being part of their experience at Algonquin. Teaching and learning begins when kids are here and feel comfortable being here each and every day, and you play a huge role in that. I'm going to follow up with what you didn't say because I'm not sure if you thought you should say this, but that grant has a sunset provision, and one of the things that Mr. Butka will be perhaps hearing about in the future years is how we can continue to support this program to think how far you've come in just such a short period of time, and the impact that you've made, not just on the students that you serve, but the message that you send the rest of the students that are not necessarily accessing access now, that you care, that we care as a school system, and that we're here to find ways each and every day to meet their needs. I think that's a powerful message for all students, whether they access this or not. And the data that you've collected and the information you've shared, and just implementing this and doing it so well in a short period of time for all students is tremendous. It takes a long time for a program to be effective, and you've moved very quickly, meeting the needs of those children and keeping them here in our school, which is where we want them to be. So great work, and I'm mindful of the fact that there is a sunset provision, and I'm sure administration is as well, and as this continues, there needs to be some backfilling of financial support as we learn more about this and expand it. So thank you.
Thanks. And just in closing, I like to say that we're very lucky to have each and every one of you in this guidance department. But I think even more so is every student in this district, in Northborough and Southwell, is very lucky to have your wisdom, your guidance, and your expertise. And if you stay here any longer, you can just sleep over. So thank you very much for everything that you do and the time that you give to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Outstanding.
And now on to more wonderful things that are happening here at Algonquin. And the next item that we have on our agenda is an English language learners update from Rhoda Webb. So we'd like to call her up to the table if possible.
Madam Chair, I think it's so appropriate that this presentation and Rhoda's expertise that she will share with us in working so closely with our English language learner population really just follows a guidance presentation, because again, it underscores the importance of meeting all students where they are and taking them where they are going to go. And Rhoda has certainly done this extremely well, and her team.
Thank you.
Not just the high school, but in our entire system. So we're thrilled to have you in district and
Thank you.
support all the work that you do for our students.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to share about our English learners at Algonquin. An English learner is a student whose first language is not English and who currently is not able to perform ordinary classroom in English. This is a state law definition. The federal definition goes into much more detail than this. Any student exposed to another language needs to be tested for English language proficiency to ensure that the student has a level of academic English needed to be able to learn in our classrooms. If a student qualifies as an English learner, the student requires specialized programming. The program we have in place in our 3 districts is called Structured English Immersion, which consists of 2 parts, the English language development and then the Structured English Immersion classroom. The English language development portion of that is taught by an ESL teacher who is qualified in the field. And the SEI part from that, which is short for Structured English Immersion, is taught by teachers, subject teachers, who have an SEI endorsement and who scaffold instruction according to a language proficiency of a student. Now, English learners, although it's a label, are not a homogeneous group, nor do they have a fixed profile. There are many factors that we need to take into consideration when we're working with our students: their educational background, their home language, their consistency in school, their mobility, if they come from urban or rural settings, whether within the United States or another country, possible trauma, individual factors and impact their learning challenges, and possibly or diagnosed disabilities and their post-secondary goals, as we just heard about. We know that they're doing double the work, and I'm quoting from the Carnegie foundation in which they say that they're learning English at the same time that they're studying core content areas through English. Thus, English learners must perform double the work of native English speakers. And at the same time, they're being held to the same accountability standards as native English-speaking peers. When English learners arrive at Algonquin, if they've been schooled in their home country, they can apply their skill sets here at the school. However, what is not so obvious is the process of acculturation that takes place in their life as they start here. And this is a very long journey. Questions such as, how do we function socially here? And then, of course, how do we do school here? One example, and it's a very small example, but a significant one of many in the academic setting, is that in some countries it's considered ethical when writing a paper to quote the words of an expert, because who am I to paraphrase the words of an expert in the field? But citation is not necessary. And you know that here that is has very serious consequences of plagiarism. So that is just one detail of differences in school, and we begin to learn through our students, and for situations that also happen, how difficult it is to adjust to a new setting. It takes a whole community of working together, and we've been doing this for many years here at Algonquin. From all our administrators, guidance counselors, nurse, our English language development teacher, Ms. Suker, who is here in the audience tonight, and all our teachers, and of course our students here. The uniqueness at Algonquin is that we receive students from many countries who start their schooling here at the beginning stages of learning English, and that means with no English at all or speaking at the word level. When high school is a critical time because students need to be able to graduate. When students come to us at the lower school level, there's more time and to develop the language and reach grade level without the pressure of high-stakes testing and graduation. And I'll come back to this in just a minute. So at the end of August, with guidance department working with a schedule and Ms. Suker, 11 new students were tested for their English language proficiency and 10 qualified as English learners at levels 1 or 2. That means no English or at the word level. They work very efficiently, both guidance department and Ms. Suker, to set up schedules, to interview the students. We get to know our students very well, assess the language proficiency level before school opens, and of course we receive students throughout the school year. I've presented 3 graphs, and if you are able to take a look at the graphs in your packets, the first one with the title English Learner and Formal English Learner Student Population Trend Analysis, you can see a steady growth at Algonquin since 2004. The numbers on the dark gray bar will indicate the active English learners in the program. The numbers on the lighter gray bars indicate the number of students reclassified from the program, but who need to be actively monitored by our English language development teacher to ensure continued growth in their learning. And as from this year, the department has requested districts to monitor the students that we've reclassified for 4 years instead of 2. These are mostly students who we've reclassified when they attended Melican and Trottier, and also here at Algonquin. An extensive data analysis starts in the spring, looking at multiple data points, and we conclude that analysis in the fall, ensuring that the students are transitioning well into their new grade level. So taking a look at both our English learners and formal English learners gives us a more complete picture of the number of students at Algonquin being instructed as well as actively monitored by the English language development teacher. So for now, for this year, we're looking at 50 students all in all compared to 35 last year. But it is the composition of profiles of the active English learners that needs most understanding. The number this school year is comprised of 1/3 of the students at the beginning stages of learning English, and students also with limited schooling, as well as mobility, meaning back and forth between their home countries or within the United States. And with most of the students this year coming to us at 16 and 17 years old. And of course of interest is to know what is happening in our towns of Northborough and Southborough, which they've also steadily grown. So currently we have 94 English learners in Northborough and Southborough with 81 English learners. We do project every year how many students will be coming from our middle schools up to Algonquin and whom we might possibly reclassify. So we do know at this time there are probably around 10 English learners moving up to grade 9 next year who will need to be in the program. If you take a look at the second page, what is of interest is the variety of languages that our students represent and have. Portuguese followed by Spanish are our predominant languages, but there's also wonderful diversity. We see Arabic, German, Hebrew, Japanese, Swahili, Chinese, French, Greek, Gujarati, Indonesian, Polish, Punjabi, Russian, Thai, Vietnamese. This gives us a unique opportunity for all of us to learn about each other's languages and cultures, because to truly learn a language is to also understand its culture. And given the diversity of languages, our students use English to be able to share with each other about their cultures and their experiences. And then by law, of course, if a family can't read English, we are obligated to translate for the family because it's important for them to have access to their child's education. The third graph in the packet is analysis of the language proficiency levels of our students. If you look along the horizontal axis, there are 6 levels of language proficiency in Massachusetts, as described by the WIDA Consortium. There are 39 states of which Massachusetts is part of this consortium. So the levels along the horizontal axis is level 1 or entering, level 2 or emerging. Level 3 is split into 2 because it's such a long phase. So there's a low developing and a high developing for level 3. Level 4 expanding, level 5 bridging, and level 6 reaching, which is at 0% because that's at the time when we are reclassifying students using multiple data, but they're already able to have enough of the language proficiency to access what is going on in the classroom. The Department of Education looks at the first 3 levels, levels 1, 2, and 3, low 3, as a foundational stage, and the other remaining 3, high developing and reaching and bridging, as a transitional level. And there are recommended, if not required, number of hours for a student to be able to grow as quickly in the English language as possible. When we're looking at a student coming in with little to no English, it's at least 3 or 4 periods a day of English language development. And there is a reason for this, because the quicker that they can acquire language, the English language, and this is in an academic setting, so it's listening, speaking, but also reading and writing, to be able to access what's going on in the classroom. The levels 4, 5, and 6, levels 4 and 5, high 3s, 4 and 5 also require time, and it's usually the coursework that we've set up is about 1 period a day because the demands, linguistic demands on them are a lot higher, and they're still developing the language. So together with the guidance department, we've been able to structure courses to meet the needs of our students. And new as of this year from the Department of Education, students who are identified as students with limited or interrupted formal schooling, also known as SLIFE students, need an educational plan similar to students with IEPs. Their needs and programming may look very different from other English learners because they have not been in school. So as you see, it's not the number of students, it's about the demands of instruction and the high-stakes nature of a high school. At the foundational level, it is resource intensive to reach a higher language proficiency in order to achieve academic goals as quickly as possible. As I said, the trend this year is that we're receiving students at level 1 and 2 who are 16 and 17 years old, and they do not have the luxury of time. For example, the students cannot access information in U.S. history. So our English language development teacher had to replace one of the courses of English language development for an introduction to U.S. history, focusing on the language foundations needed so that next year the students can begin to access U.S. history. It's not because of the students' individual capabilities, but because they're learning English and don't have the language proficiency level to access the content in the classroom that they cannot be in the classrooms. And this happens, of course, across other subjects as well. So I refer to the programming of English learners as structured English immersion. And you must be familiar or have heard of the Retail Initiative, which is Rethinking Equity in Teaching English Learners, which is a federal mandate in Massachusetts, and it started 2 years ago for Algonquin. The SEI endorsement is a requirement for our core academic teachers, English, math, science, civic and government, economics, history, and special education teachers. But the course is training teachers to work with students at levels 3 and above. And at level 3 is speaking in simple sentences. So it's not a very high level either. So it's very understandable why a subject teacher, you'd ask them to start at the level 3. That is even very difficult, and they're trained how to scaffold information at that level. But you see that leaves the level 1s and 2s really learning all that they can from our English language development teacher. I mentioned double the work. English learners are also not only doing double the work, but they're also tested double. So the Access 2.0 test is the state test. It's a yearly test that assesses language proficiency in listening, speaking, reading, and writing domains. Ms. Suka has just finished administering it last Friday for most of our students. Last year it was offered online for the very first time, so that's how Algonquin offered the test. And we have done that again this year. The students, of course, also need to take MCAS and pass that. The students who come to us at very low levels can be exempt from the ELA MCAS the first year that they're in the country, but they do have to take math and science. They're able to have a bilingual dictionary and glossary and an interpreter to interpret the instructions of the test, but that is all. This also comes at a time when our high schoolers are also taking SATs and getting ready in their pathway to get ready for college. Our students are able to take the TOEFL, which is for students who have English as a foreign language. And Ms. Suker with the guidance department also helps the students get ready for that or how to take that test. This is happening at Algonquin and has been happening for many years, but it's all the departments working very closely together, all the administrators, ensuring that our students feel that they belong in our school, that they have access to all the wonderful programs, after-school programs, all the electives that we have here. They have access to our summer program as well. So it's a true collaboration that has been taking place for years. We also work with the families very closely, and in the fall there was a meeting for our parents, and there were interpreters there that Ms. Suka facilitated with our guidance department, because there's so many questions. I at one point I was in that place, coming to this country, not understanding the whole college process or how school worked here at Algonquin, and to be able to be in a small group and ask all the questions that you need to ask in order to understand, which is very different when you, I know things change, and things have changed a lot, but to feel safe and to be able to ask the questions that you need to ask when you come to the country as an immigrant. So thank you for the opportunity for sharing, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Open for questions from the committee members. Paul?
No, I have more of a comment than anything else. I mean, this is just, you know, we knew that Algonquin was kind of the melting pot of the Northborough and Southborough communities, but, you know, what do we say, 17, 18, 19 different languages being spoken here. I mean, it's truly a melting pot in a much more global sense than anything that I knew before. So this was terrifically enlightening for me. I mean, I was fascinated by the whole thing, and the growth of the program. I mean, you talked a little bit about the fact that there's 50 kids in the program now. Last couple of years, there's been about 35. As recently as 2004 and 5, I mean, just for the people that are kind of hearing your presentation and don't have access to the graphs, there were only 4. I mean, we've grown in an incredibly significant way, and you know, providing great services. I was fascinated by that whole thing today. Thank you very much for coming here tonight.
Thank you. Patty, and then Dave.
Well, some of the growth from 2016, 2017 is because of that reclassification. Do you know what the number would have been if there was no reclassification?
About 10 less. You mean for the third year if we weren't adding, right?
Right, yep.
Yes, around 10 students less.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dave?
I guess I don't understand how it works with all of these different languages, with the instructors. How do they get through? How do they teach?
Well, that's a really good question. It is very important. Your question, I think, has 2 parts. One thing is our English language development teacher. We have been very fortunate at Algonquin to have a very highly qualified ESL teacher whose training is to know how to teach a language for students from many different languages. So that is part of the training, and to understand how different languages work. And also the acculturation piece, because it's not just about learning the language, it's really about functioning in the language and the new culture. Ms. Zucker's a great, a wonderful collaborator for all our teachers here at Algonquin to give strategies and to help teachers. In fact, she does this at the beginning of every year before school starts, to be able to speak to the different teams of teachers about who our students are, their language proficiency level, and what strategies will work for the students with whom the teachers are working. So she explains what that language proficiency level means, and then what can be done in the classroom for the students. The endorsement, that's the course, a graduate level course that teachers need to take, help teachers, it's a beginning course, to help teachers understand the complexity of trying to access very difficult content at the high school, linguistically complex content, to be able to start to scaffold that. Because we're all teaching language, the English language in a way. It is not easy, but we are very fortunate to have very skilled teachers in our staff as well.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
I understand it a bit better.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Barbara, and then Lynn.
Is this fully funded by the federal government then, or partially funded as the program grows? Is it going to be more funded by the federal government, or keeping up with the cost of all of this?
Right.
To me, seems phenomenal.
No, we implement the mandates, and we make sure that we are following all the regulations within Massachusetts and what is best for the students. No, but that is something that the district is funding.
Totally and fully.
It is offset with some federal funds through the Title III grant.
Okay,
But
that's
just
what I-
as many grants come, they go.
They go.
Or they decrease over time. And so we've been keeping the balance of slowly trying to migrate things that are now on the grant into our operational budget, and being certainly respectful of that process and the effect of that transition to the operational budget. But as we know, not only is the grant in flux, but there's never a shortage of mandates related to this program. And so oftentimes what might have been, I don't want to say discretionary funding, but funding that was more available to offset other costs, we use that funding to absorb perhaps another layer of mandates that came through this process. A really wonderful example, and I have to applaud Rhoda's efforts in this regard, is the whole retail program. That was a mandate that was sort of launched through the federal government to us from the state, and we did not have an option. If we had English language learners in our classroom, our teachers needed to have that endorsement, and that endorsement was required by the Department of Education. And so that was something that Rhoda spearheaded with some support, and all of our teachers, or a significant number of our teachers, have earned that endorsement in part because we were able to acquire the training and be trainers for others. So those are just some examples that we find on our doorstep. And certainly we find our students there and want to do the best we can for each and every one of them.
And Elaine?
I just want to thank you for your presentation. You had a lot of an area that I have not been exposed to at all, other than my sister having to do the retail training. So and as I echo Dave, the wonder of, how you teach someone who come from many different languages and how to understand English. Sort of like there's a lot of times people wonder, how do you teach someone to read, just like reading in English? I mean, that's a skill that not everyone can do as well. So thank you for the time, and the presentation was very, very enlightening. And all, like Paul, with all the different languages we're dealing with, it's impressive.
Thank you.
I have one comment. I noticed on the chart here, there's 17 languages for the 2016-2017. And we've all talked about the students, but you also talked about interpreting reports and
Yes.
everything for parents.
Yes.
Out of all these languages, how many, and I hate to put you on the spot,
No,
how many of these have to be interpreted for parents?
So the way it works is parents let us know when every parent fills out a home language, whether a family just speaks English at home, every family fills out the same home language survey. We have to ask the question if a family needs an interpreter and/or translations. So the languages, and so the parents let us know, yes or no. We have to ask that question. So at this time, and it can vary from year to year, at Algonquin we're translating into Portuguese and Spanish. Those are the two languages that we're translating into right now.
So do you translate?
Through request.
Through request.
It's
So
through
do you
request.
translate everything, every document that comes through, the report cards?
Report cards for sure. We're providing interpreters at meetings. For example, the guidance department had a meeting for parents, and we reach out to the parents who request interpretation. We invite them to the meeting to see if they can attend. We'll provide an interpreter. So not all documents are translated, but the ones that are crucial for parents to understand what is happening at school, we will do that or interpret that document. That means through an interpreter.
Because, I mean, we just heard the wonderful program from the guidance department, and you want to make all the students aware of it, so you still have to interpret all the services that are being offered across the board, but even especially some of the ones that were highlighted tonight for parents, to make them aware that
You're
it's
right.
available for them. It really is. And I'd also applaud you for your program that you had here on the SEI course, because when I had to register for the course, of course, I wanted to take it in Northborough, it would be close and handy, and that was the first one that was filled up. So I would applaud Northborough and your staff and your teachers for offering that SEI course here to anyone across the state of Massachusetts. But of course, the teachers here had, you know, they knew when to register for it first. And it's a very intense, I'll tell you, because I took the course, it's very intense. So I applaud all the teachers that have taken the SEI endorsement, because it lasts 6 months, it seems, and there's many different courses and many assignments you have to do, so I applaud the teachers. But it does make you a better educator when you have that done. So I applaud you and your staff that is here tonight, so thank you very much. Barbara?
Do you recommend that families that are involved in this program with their students, that they should be speaking English at home as well as in the classroom?
Well, what happens throughout the years is that is what will naturally happen. The research shows, which is what is most important is to have access to all the wonderful programs. What research shows is that if a family is able to keep their home language, then that child, especially if they're young, it's very important not to lose for the developmental. They'll do better at school if they're able to grow their other language and not have a complete loss of language. So, although that seems contradictory, that if you want to be better in a language, you should leave everything else aside and only focus on one language, there's plenty of research to show that cognitively that is not the way it goes. What ultimately does happen in languages as children bring in more and more English into the home, that's what does happen. Languages are lost. So what we do encourage families to do is show them access to all of the wonderful resources that we have, and also encourage them to maintain their home language if they're able to. So, so that they get a lot of everything. That's a very good question.
It's an interesting challenge, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It really is.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we move on to the agenda, the next is the superintendent's report to the committee.
And as always, we begin with the much-awaited summary of events and activities that have taken place at Algonquin since our last meeting, and I would like to turn this over to Principal Mead.
Thank you, Superintendent Johnson. Just a few highlights from the report here. We're starting up a radio station, and we have, we're following the pathway that's been set up by Maynard High School, actually, which has had a radio station for a long time. And so they've been very helpful to us in getting ours up and running. So we're in the midst of securing enough talent, though, to get this thing started. So we have to get down to business here with some radio auditions and that sort of thing. So
what is it going to do?
It's going to be informative, I hope, and perhaps entertaining, but it's also going to be a wonderful experience, I think, for a number of our students to get involved in this. And Julie Doyle, who's our instructional technologist, and who is curious about just about everything, she's pushing on this effort here to make this happen. So it's going to be pretty interesting when we get going. A couple of notes about our math students and our math competitions. You can see the Math Olympiad. A couple of students were semifinalists in that. Jennifer and Barath doing very well. Also, our precocious one from Milliken, Andrew Lee, blew the doors off just about everybody at that particular competition. So, that's very exciting for us and very, very thrilling for us to have many of these students who are so talented in math. We do also offer that Olympiad to anybody and everybody, so any student can participate in the Olympiad. It's an open competition. We also have what looks like the 8th Honor Society at Algonquin, and probably, I think, the fourth or fifth new one in the last couple of years. Hopefully, there's an end to the number of content areas, so we can stop with this stuff. But anyway, this is the Math Honor Society, and it's about to go into their first induction ceremony. That's coming up. But just the real driving force behind all this is Brian Cowan. Brian is a math teacher. He came to us from Southbridge High School 3-4 years ago now, I think. And Brian has done a remarkable job. He's worked very closely, in fact, with Dan Forehand, who's also taken our kids off to numerous competitions at the college and high school level for computer science and computer programming. So the two of them have really stoked the math department around the value and the excitement of competition. So our kids go off and do very well. Harbinger, I know you keep up with that, but they also have continued with the awards that they've received. There's 3 accolades there listed, as you can see. Again, doing great stuff. 4 or 5 years ago, they made the jump into an online version of the paper. They're electronic. They're on Twitter now. They're all over social media, flooding it with good information about Algonquin and providing a very, very integral source of information and communication for our whole school community. So kudos to Lindsay Copens, who teaches English and journalism, and she advises the Harbinger. Our Writing Center, which is just on the other side of a stack of books over there in that conference room that we have off the main hallway. Used to be the AV room, used to have all kinds of AV equipment in there on rolling wheels and things like that. And technology has pretty much wiped all that out, which is nice because now we have the space to use, and we're using that space right now for a Writing Center. They passed a milestone. They conducted their 100th tutoring session in about a month of their operation. Next semester, which is just around the corner here, the Writing Center is going to be open for selected periods during the school day, which is a great expansion, if you will, of their availability, and I think that's going to be lead to increasingly high numbers of kids taking advantage of this particular feature that we have, this service that we have for academics. Just a few other things. Ms. Spischek-Geige is a teacher in our culinary arts program, and she, against all odds, had something called a culinary challenge, and it was a raging success. This is a little program that you can take a look at after I finish these remarks, but the culinary challenge featured activity that you could normally find on the cable TV news or cable programming that we have available throughout the land. Did it right here, though, in Algonquin, and the whole thing was filmed on cable TV, and I think the Harbinger was there, that sort of thing, but they had 9 teams spread across the kitchens that we have here for our culinary program. And there was a combination of student teams, teacher teams, townspeople teams, all that sort of thing. They awarded 3 prizes. They had 3 chefs from nearby restaurants and eateries to be the judges for these things. They even had hats that were well over 10 gallons. They went straight up, and you could put a lot of food in there if you wanted to. But at any rate, I have a few pictures there that I included. They raised money for the Serenity Garden, which has about 12 to 13 raised beds for vegetables and herbs and all sorts of things that are so important to cooking. And we do a lot of our own cooking with our own vegetables and produce that we create and grow here at Algonquin. So this will help immensely in keeping that program going, especially during those summer months when it's necessary to water and weed and to otherwise tend to gardens and We don't want to lose what we've made an investment in. There's a HOSA grant. HOSA is an acronym, of course, for Health Occupation Students of America, HOSA. Started out with 6 students about 2 years ago. We're now at 35 student members. And they just received a grant of $5,000 from the NNLM, that is the National Network of Libraries of Medicine. What that allows us to do is to access that particular resource for our students, and also to help us promote healthy living and healthy lifestyles, and the importance of fitness and health and nutrition throughout the community. So it's going to give our students the support to do those kinds of projects from HOSA. That makes them a much more dynamic organization. It's wonderful to get this support from this library association. They have great resources for our students in that particular thing. A couple of teachers from science, Susan Vaughn and Lori Mott, are advisors to that. Our own Brittany Burns, you can see there, she was asked by K-12 Education, which has a blog on the web called Teacher to Teacher, and she made an entry at the invitation of that organization for how to conduct conversations that are difficult and maintain civility in the classroom situation and discussions. So, if you have time to burn, you could check out what Brittany had on that. And finally, our DECA regional results. We sent 140 students this year, which is a rather high number for us, over to the regional competition. 90 of them qualified to move on to the state level. So that's the crowd that's going on the overnight field trip to Boston to compete at the state level. One of the categories, it was a marketing category. They typically, I think, across the board, they award the first 6 places for going to states. And so our Algonquin students swept all 6. So 12 students walked up to pick up their trophies. And they'll duke it out one more time at a higher level, at the state level, to see who's the ultimate champion there. But a stunning, collection of first, second, third place, fourth place, fifth place, sixth place, all that sort of thing. They had quite the time, and things went very well. And finally, at the end, our musical organization, our program in music, is sending 15 students to the All States for competition. They go this weekend to Shrewsbury High School, and whatever comes out of that will also travel on to the state level itself. So, high excitement here, as a lot of competitions, a lot of organizations, and a lot of initiatives have good results, and it's been busy, but we're going to get hunkered down because we're entering our midterm exam period. So I'm just going to throttle down, get mindful, and get through it. Thank you so much.
Questions or comments?
Great.
Paul?
So, as always, it's just a terrific report, Tom. Thank you very, very much. I'm sure they didn't do it for the publicity, but nobody minds publicity. So just to kind of call them out, the judges in the culinary competition were from Applebee's, Tavern on the Square, and U.S. Foods. So thank to those organizations for volunteering.
Thank you. That's a good mention.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you for the wonderful report.
Pleasure.
Next on our agenda is the FY17 monthly general fund expenditure report.
Yes, the general fund expenditure report is in your packet, and I'd like a motion to approve until audited.
Oh,
So I would motion that we vote to approve the monthly general fund expenditure report as of December 31st, 2016, until audited.
second by Dan, duo tonight. All those, motions on the table, any discussion? All those then in favor for the motion? And it passes unanimous.
Also in your packet, FY17 revenue report. A vote to approve until audited, please.
Paul?
And I would move that we vote to approve the statement of revenue, December 31st, 2016, until audited.
Dan?
I would like to second.
Thank you. Any discussion, comments? All those in favor of the motion on the table? And it passes unanimous. Thank you.
Budget priorities for FY18, actually moving from FY17 towards our budget presentation, are in your packet. We'll be revisiting those as we view the presentation this evening. And the budget calendar is also in your packet. It continues to grow as we progress through the budget process. Enrollments are in your packet as well. To revisit those, again, we'll be taking a look at the enrollment numbers as we take a look at the FY18 preliminary budget this evening.
And then the last item under Superintendent's report is the FY18 preliminary budget presentation.
And I have PowerPoints to distribute, and we'll just hold on to it so I can distribute the line item budgets as well if we'd like to do that.
Sure.
Already on the big screen. Give some read it. And before I begin, I'd like to mention a few folks who are in the audience with us this evening in case there are questions as we progress through the preliminary budget or at the end. Leo Brem, our Director of Instructional Technology and Digital Learning, more than welcome to come forward if you'd like. Marie Allen, our Director of Student Support Services, and Rhoda was here earlier, and we appreciate that. And it's nice to see Mike Gorman here as well, although we approved the capital plan and maintenance plan last month. There may be some questions as well as we progress through this evening's presentation. I would like to say that I've always felt that the budget really just is the story in numeric form of all of the ways in which the budget supports a school. And certainly, while I might be presenting this evening the budget numbers, we've actually been telling the story since September. And the budget supports all of the good work, much of what you've heard this evening from our guidance department, from Rhoda Webb, in terms of all of the work that we've done to address the needs of our students and continue to fulfill unfunded mandates from the state level and the federal level. But throughout each month, they have too been telling the story that the budget will be sharing this evening. And the clicker is not working because the drive is not inside. Well, we'll just click the old-fashioned way. This is something we revisit each and every school committee meeting, but also I think it particularly came alive this evening as we heard the presentations as well. Opportunities for students to live and learn in a dynamic learning environment, sparked by the innovative spirit of not only our students but also the staff who are willing to engage in new opportunities as they present themselves, but more importantly, as they present themselves, seizing those moments to continue to provide services for our students, whether it be through the operational budget or, as you heard this evening, through some good grant work that's been taking place, as it always does, with the support of our school community, grant opportunities through private sources, this evening the Metro West Health Foundation, and also through our ed foundations in both communities of Northborough and Southborough. This is our commitment to work continuously and each and every opportunity in a collaborative fashion so that we can continue to present an educationally sound budget that supports the good work that takes place here, the efforts of our students, and also to do that in a very fiscally responsible way. This evening's budget, again, highlights the budget priorities, and I think as we progress through the budget this evening, we'll be able to see and identify tangible evidence of how these priorities continue through the budget process. Last year, we began a very ambitious goal to increase and refresh and enrich our instructional resources in all of our department areas. Mr. Mead and the department chairs and his administrative team, assistant principals also played a key role in developing a 5-year plan to do just that, to, on a cyclical basis, knowing that to do that in any given year would not be fiscally responsible, but rather on a cyclical basis to begin a process of renewal for those resources. This is our second year in the budget process of doing just that. To achieve class sizes according to school committee policy, we talk about that when Mr. DiDomenico presents our class size analysis, which usually happens in the early fall, helps guide us through our work as we begin the budget process, and also to look for opportunities to ensure that we're providing enough seats for students to be able to select those classes that they choose to take each and every year. So that's also very important and part of that analysis. To prepare all students for high levels of success. Rhoda this evening presented information that might have been new to us, that those students with limited English proficiency also take the Access online WIDA equivalent test, but also are required to take the MCAS. And that is in addition to all of the other tests, the ACTs, the SATs, the PSATs, that come with being high school students these days. And also that transition program. We certainly want to make sure that all of our students are ready to participate in all of those testing opportunities. So good work to ensure that all students achieve at their highest level of personal best. The initiatives of the school improvement plan, again, the 4 focus areas are curriculum, student support services, technology, and instructional practices. And so throughout our work developing the project, we're very mindful of how we communicate that message to our parents and to our students. That is also a focus area of the plan. Technology, much of what we talked about this evening, the online testing environment, the ways in which students participate in the teaching and learning experience each and every day. In our 21st century world, that involves technology. Some great work by our technology leaders in the district, working in collaboration with Leo, also working in collaboration with the staff here. We continue to look at ways we can refresh our technology, enrich our technology, and build sort of a sustainability at a fiscally responsible level and process of renewal. So we've been looking at our infrastructure, making sure that our infrastructure is strong, is vibrant, is robust, to handle all of the devices at the high school that students may be deploying in order to access the curriculum to the fullest. And then also to create and fund a very short-term, and we call that, I think, Mike, the maintenance plan side of the capital plan, but also to be mindful of capital expenditures that may be in our future. So that plan is a 6-year plan, and it's refreshed quite regularly, and we do refer to that as we expend funds throughout the year. And again, that was approved last month by the committee. Some of the great work that's taken place with that plan is to be safe school ready, and a lot of the work that's been done around that really presented itself in the capital plan a couple years ago, and I think we're almost to the point where we have actually realized all our goals in that plan. Here is the budget process. Some new dates for us. Just recently spoke with Mark Purple last night and then again this morning. Town meeting dates. I think as we go through this process, there are some really key moments in this process. One of them will be coming along January 30th. It's particularly of interest to the regional district because there are a lot of key financial indicators that will be presented and released in the governor's budget. And that's why this evening is preliminary, because we're looking forward to the release of that information. Oftentimes it affects regional transportation, Chapter 70 funding, and then of course some indication about what the minimum contributions are for both of our communities as identified throughout this process. We are hopeful that we will be presenting preliminary and a recommended budget next month, but again, There is a lot of information that's very important for us to know as we move closer to that recommended budget. And at this point, early on in the process, actually, the governor's budget is one. We do still have some staffing numbers that we're waiting to receive, and so some of those play a part in developing that final recommended budget. Town meeting dates are set for Northborough on Monday, April 24th, and on Tuesday in Southborough, April 25th. Our enrollment percentages are basically before you this evening. They are based always on our October 1 enrollments. That's the day that we have to submit our enrollment data to the Department of Education. And you'll see the shifting that's taken place over what is 13 years, I think, that we have in front of you. And that plays an important role in the calculations as we progress through this process to determine each of the assessments for the town of Northborough and Southborough. So based on our October 1 enrollment, Northborough is 58.23% and Southborough is 41.77% as we go into the FY18 budget cycle. This year's budget presents opportunities to meet some of our budget priorities, and in particular, we do have 2 positions that were reduced, I think, Tom, we determined almost 4 years ago. They were originally 1.0 positions, and slowly we're moving closer to returning them to the 1.0 positions. Currently, they're at 0.8. One of them would be in the social studies department. We have a teacher at this point that is in a 0.8 FTE. We're looking to add 0.2. And by the way, that translates in terms of student opportunities for course preference, course selection, course opportunities to almost 50 seats. That's 25 open seats for students to select each semester. And also in world language, that may not necessarily be a semester course. Oftentimes world language is a full year course, but it still opens up 25 or plus or minus, depending on enrollment, number of opportunities for students. We're here this evening and saw some pretty amazing numbers about our increasing ELL population, limited English proficiency population, best explained and presented by Rhoda Webb, the district coordinator, and in the budget for next year, based on those numbers, and by the way, those numbers really do translate into mandated number of hours required for us to meet individually with each student based on their continuum of proficiency. And so we're looking to add a 0.5 to really meet those mandates. The next position is actually a 0.3 of a 1.0. Just as technology continues to evolve, the platforms change, the infrastructure requirements need upgrading to handle all of those changes. So do the needs of our district in terms of how we provide support for our teachers and for our administrators, and also to manage all of this, oftentimes remotely. And so at this point, we do, through the K-12 system, have an individual who is now 1.0 and is assigned to a particular district and a particular school. Because of those changing needs, we've identified that, well, in reality, we in each district do need a little bit more support in order to make sure that the technology is ready for the students to use. And so we're looking at allocating that 1.0 position to 0.3 for Algonquin, and that position will be shared at K-8 in both Northborough and Southborough, but Algonquin's FTE equivalent would be a 0.3 addition, for a total increase of 1.2 FTE equivalent. We talked a little bit, Barbara, you asked a question about funding, and so this really speaks to that question. I was delighted to hear you ask that because you just brought home that bullet point. We have a Title III grant. Rhoda is supported by one administrative assistant. The amount of work, paperwork that's required whenever you have mandates and federal grants and those kinds of things in place by one individual who is currently paid in part on a Title III grant that continues to decrease while the needs increase. And so what we're looking to do this year is switch or shift that .4 position from the grant funding that it now is where it's now located to a .3 or 30% of that .4 position here at Region. Then that is also then shared with the other districts, just as the technology specialist would be. So it gets a little complicated. It's actually a .3 of a .4. It's a new math equation. And also, I mentioned earlier, as we were going through our priorities, we want to continue to move forward with that 5-year plan of instructional materials renewal. And in this case, this is the second year, and we do see a slight increase in instructional materials and resources. And Tom, I think we've identified science as being one department, social studies, and I think world language as the key. I mean, it's spread out across all the departments, but those are the 3 targets, I think, for this year.
Yes.
And then again, to make sure that we stay current with our infrastructure and continually renew antiquated technology. I will say that the folks in the tech department are doing a masterful job of redeploying equipment, of devices that otherwise might be identified as recyclable. And we're trying to use the term dedicated devices, that being equipment that, or devices that can handle maybe 1 or 2 particular applications that are earmarked for 1 or 2 departments. So rather than suggest that the technology can't handle all of the new software and all of the new applications, we're really looking for a way to rededicate that equipment, being mindful of and being resourceful. So our preliminary budget, with supporting those and still sustaining current services, represents a $1,283,161 increase, or a 5.9% preliminary increase. I think it's important to note, and we'll see this a little bit in the chart that follows, that this time last year we were at a 5.72% increase. And the work continues as the quality of the and depth of the information comes to us that really does clarify our numbers for the FY18 final recommended budget. What are some of the factors on the incremental cost increases that we see this year in the preliminary budget? We, earlier this evening, ratified a contract. We do have 2 other contracts yet to negotiate, and they are in the process. So teachers, of course, being the biggest, but we do have 2, the largest number of folks, but we do have 2 more to negotiate this year. We do have a request for the staff to fulfill those course requests. We do have a process of replacing and upgrading our instructional resources, year 2 of a 5-year plan. One of the biggest cost factors at the regional district level is that within our budget, we fund really overhead type of expenses, that being health insurance, Medicare, liability insurance, workers' comp. And that is a challenge that a regional district has to, in that budget, support all of those increased costs. And this year, like many years, that is the greatest % of our increase as one single line item. And then to fund increases in tuitions and transportation. You heard the Access story earlier today, and it was a wonderful story to share. Those programs allow us to keep our students close at heart, to keep them here in our district, in our school community. But there are some instances where it's so individualized and customized that we're just not able to do that. And we do see an increased cost in that for FY18. Here's a little bit of a snapshot. When we look at those little pieces that are popping up, that's really the funding that we could affect in sort of a discretionary way. It totals about 10% of that total 1.283 budget increase, and they include the instructional materials, which is about a 3% of our overall increase, that represents the staffing, which is not the mandated staffing, which is the ELL component. That is fulfilling a mandate. We need to make sure that that staff is available and accessible for our ELL students, just as we would in some other, in our student support area. And that's a 3%. And then our technology is about a 4% discretionary amount. And when I say discretionary, it doesn't imply at all that we do not need these resources. But when you look at the other kinds of costs that are reflected in that 1.2 budget increase, we really can't do too much about the transportation increase. We've got tuitions that we need to support. We have that 23% increase in that regional overhead cost factor that we talked about a little bit. We've got an ELL, which is really mandated staffing, and so it's broken out a little bit for you in greater detail, but I think it really does demonstrate that we're being very responsible in the areas that we can affect slight increases in the budget. I thought this was an interesting snapshot because we're oftentimes talking about what does a 5.9% increase look like. So with all of those line items in the budget, one of the biggest factors, again, I'm going to refer to this, is a 1.29% increase in the overall 5.9% that is presented in the preliminary budget, represented by those costs we call regional district operational funding line items. This is an example or another view of the history of our non-exempt assessments. And I mentioned earlier that last year we were at a 5.72 at the time we presented the preliminary. And I actually looked at the clock and it's almost exactly the same time, a different date. And you'll notice that with all of that information that became available to us from the preliminary to the recommended, we finally realized an increase of 3.82% last year. And we were able to, in those areas that I identified in the pie chart that we had some flexibility with, we were able to see some increases. We did move a few positions last year from 0.8s to 1.0s, and we were able to launch our first year of renewal for our instructional resources and materials. There's some averages on the bottom that will continue to grow. It's over 12 years because, of course, this year is still in the preliminary stages. And that is the preliminary budget. Thank you. I'm looking forward to getting some more information and presenting the recommended budget next, or preliminary number 2, whatever is the phase 2.
Are there any questions or comments from board members? No? Christine, I know that this is a process that began almost after school began for this 16-17 school year. It was like even earlier when you wanted the budgets to be in. So I'd like to applaud your administrative staff, the teachers, building principal for doing such a wonderful job on a budget when we have such tight fiscal restraints, and also the operational budget subcommittee that met last night to work with you on this. So I'd like to applaud everybody for this, and I think I love the colored graphs this year that are added, and it's nice to see the history and to put all those numbers down.
Thank you. Definitely a team effort. A lot of collaboration. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Going on to our agenda is we have old business, is the appointment of the district treasurer update.
The update is she's working on at being a district treasurer. The hope was that she would start January 3rd, and she did. She was there first thing in the morning. The discussions that we had obviously were successful, and she has immersed herself in the role of district treasurer. She's actually participated in some trainings that we wasn't required, but we've had some trainings with certain software applications, and she's been present with, at each of those trainings. She's partnered with our interim treasurer, who obviously was interim and no longer with us, David King. I know I see her knee-deep in documents with Cheryl Levesque, so very happy to again welcome her to the district and thank the committee for approving her recommendation.
Any comments? Okay, going on, the next one is policy development and distribution. You have in your packets a second reading for policy I-100, which is the school calendar. And I'd also like to report out to the full committee that we had a very informative policy subcommittee meeting that took place preceding this meeting. And in attendance, we had the administrative staff, Cheryl and Greg, along with Cheryl Lepre and who was the other secretary?
I don't know. Nancy Bissett.
Nancy Bissett, along with Lynn was a committee member there, Kathleen, Patty, and myself. So I think that after, and everybody has worked, I think sometime on the policy, we decided maybe that we have to have another meeting, but somehow get it so it could be a 3-hour span. But we didn't know to start at 6 in the morning or what time at night. But we did a lot of good work, and there's a lot of policies I think that you want us to look over, and some that might be outdated or something. Always a policy review.
Yeah, great work with the policy committee, always looking for new opportunities to clarify practice and find new ways for people to engage in doing great things for the district.
Paul?
So you want a motion to approve this policy, is that correct? I'm reading this right? So I move that we vote to approve, as a result of its second reading, the policy titled School Calendar-I-100.
Second.
Second by Dan. Any discussion? Lynn?
Yeah, I just want to talk about this change to the policy and removing the named holidays. So through this process of a couple of years that we've talked about this and got a lot of feedback from many different people who are affected by the policy or the lack of the policy not affecting them, their holiday not being included. I would like, one of the biggest things at the high school level that we heard from kids and in the Harbinger article is, the difficulty they find in celebrating their holiday with their family because of the academic pressures they feel, either, even if it's just, homework assignments that they have to make up. A lot of times people, don't want to miss the class time, but really the biggest thing that I hear when I talk to people is, having, a test the next day, having to catch up with the work of all 5 classes and all the homework assignments. And so I had suggested at our policy meeting that we consider having a policy dealing with the issues of, religious holidays and how we might accommodate some of these hardships that would keep kids from celebrating the holiday with their family. When they are a minority in this country and do not have it's not afforded to them that their holiday is a federal holiday. And I think it's important as a school committee point of view, as it was back when the policy was first written, it was important to send a message to the community by having those holidays named in the policy, that was an important thing for the school committee, a message to send to the community. And also, a lot of times, it would also provide a consistent treatment. You're not left to the, what one teacher might do versus another teacher. And so it's not kind of the luck of the draw. And also, a second thing is with athletics, and if students miss class that day, they're not allowed to participate in the game. So I know that our practice has been not to schedule games on the holidays where the kids would be missing class. I would like to have us consider having a policy to deal with these issues, and that it would send a message to the community that this is important to the school committee. And so I'd just like to have the school committee send direction to the policy committee to take this up.
Kathleen?
I have a question. So is that what you described sounds more procedural to me, and the kind of information you typically find in the student handbook? Is that where that sort of direction would belong more than policy, which seems to me to be a little bit more high level and
Well, I think like in a school committee policy, it could be written in such a way that it's high level, and then, because we have lots of policies that are in our policy book that are also repeated in more detail in the school handbook. So, we could write a policy as a school committee to send the message that this is what needs to be, we expect these kinds of procedures to be put into the handbook in more detail, hopefully maybe even, engaging the students that are affected, what kinds of situations you're running in, so that the school, when they're developing the handbook, it's more detailed regarding some of how it's going to be implemented. But we'd be able to send a message that this is important to us and to our community, and we could write a policy that's at high level enough to do that. So,
I have Christine.
I agree that I too have heard that as one of the number one concerns from parents, from students, and from administrators. I think that oftentimes when we sit down to craft a policy, we do so after input from a variety of stakeholders. I know when we discussed the calendar at the combined meeting, we had some discussions about the survey that we were going to be sending out shortly. That's on our list to draft and review, which I think will bring about a wealth of perspective and information. At this point, it's almost important, I think, to inventory what our practices are, so that we can craft some better language when we sit down to write that high-level policy. In addition to that, one of the things that we wanted to move forward with was a little bit, I don't know if we want to put it under the cultural proficiency umbrella at this point, but we know that we have a lot of work to do with that. And Paul DiDomenico himself has participated in quite a lengthy training experience around what that would look like in a district, and when a district wanted to undertake this discussion. So the part of that was forming a subcommittee, because while we're here this evening talking about this at the high school level, it's also come up at the K-8 level, and to sort of have a consistency throughout in terms of what our expectations are for students, for teachers, for parents on those days where people choose to celebrate their individual faith. So the goal was to get the survey done and get that committee formed so we can gather information directly from teachers. What have they been doing? What difficulties do they encounter? And then sort of bring all that back together and synthesize it, help guide our work next September when we take up this conversation again. But in the interim, it could definitely be valuable information if the committee decides to move forward with the crafting of a policy. And we're actually hoping to move fairly quickly on this. We were hoping to do sort of 2 versions or 2 rollouts of the survey, making sure that we get all the input that we possibly could, and then getting a group together of not only parents but also educators to talk about some of the difficulties they find now, so that when we sit down, we're we're doing that at a far more elevated sense of knowledge and information. But I agree, that's what we've heard as well. And that was one of the biggest considerations, not just for those we now celebrate, but for those that we don't. And it comes down to the equity again. So I would ask that the school committee consider allowing us to do that work and bringing it to the policy committee in some sort of synthesized form so that we could move about writing one and having that in place for next year perhaps.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a sense of, from the committee that, that they are in favor of having a policy at the school committee level and not just leaving it up to, you know, handbook or, you know, things like that. I mean, just to send a message, you know, here we are, you know, we are taking the holidays of the named away from people that are used to having it. And I think that it would send a good message that the school committee thinks that this is important, and we've heard what, you know, people have told us, and that it is our intent to develop a policy at the school committee level to provide direction, which would then funnel down into this building level to come up with more specific, you know, policy procedures.
I just have a question. How many people are unhappy with this? The way that we're doing it right now? And we can't be everything to everybody. So I think those are two things to kind of think about as well.
Well, there was, you know, a room full of people that came a few years back that, you know, were very upset, were very concerned about it because it's it is quite a burden, and when you are a minority in a community, and you know, no one, they don't have a federal holiday to allow them to do it without any worries. It's, you know, it's kind of hard, and you know, we provide a lot of support. You know, the Access program, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of help and for students that need it, and you know, this is another, you know, you saw the number of different languages people speak, and you know, various services that are available. This is, you know, that's federally mandated, but I think, you know, the school committee it would be a good message to send to the community of I don't know the exact numbers, Barbara, but I know that next to Westboro, Northborough, Southborough is the largest, most families that are in the two temples that are in Westboro. So we are one of the bigger communities that have Jewish population.
Well, it's a very sensitive area, so.
Paul?
So, I mean, so the motion is to approve this kind of simplified policy, which, you know, just says the calendar is prepared by the superintendent and voted and approved by the school committee each year. Schools close on legal holidays and may close on other days as voted and approved by the school committee. So do you want us to, I guess my question is, you know, with that motion in front of us, are you suggesting we vote this down and send it back to policy and have them come up with something more complicated to deal with discretionary days off and how the schools and the administration should handle it? Or are you suggesting that we approve this policy as it's submitted, but then ask the policy committee to address a subsequent policy that deals more with the procedures and process around how we administer some of those holidays that are more voluntary in nature?
Yeah, I mean, it's more the latter, and it really isn't, what I have envisioned for a policy wouldn't be policies and procedures, that would be in the handbook, but just send a message and a direction that that's the expectation of the school committee.
And I think we can do it sometimes. I know we had, I don't know if it was this district or what, a homework policy that mentioned that if a student was out due to a holiday, a religious observance, that there wouldn't be any testing that student would be subjected to coming back, or there wouldn't be any homework detriment if the homework wasn't completed. So maybe, going back through the policy and what Christine said and addressing your concerns, and I know you were at the policy last night in your involvement, but I think there is probably something that we can address, I would think, through policy, because I know there was something in the past about a homework, so it may not be just homework, maybe homework and testing, and maybe something else, something like that, to take in concern your concerns and other, community members that you're involved with. And I think it takes care of all the other different nationalities and all the other observances of all the other holidays. I would think we could do it through policy, but we'll see. Kathleen?
Just a point of reference, the Algonquin homework policy has not been reviewed since 1987. So it's probably time that we review that.
That was probably the one that said why we needed 3 hours in the next policy meeting. So
what are we
So, I just was,
voting, or what are we voting on?
Well, I think,
I know we're voting on the specific new policy regarding the holidays, but it's, it was my concern about changing that policy has to do with all the feedback we've heard from various minorities, groups that are affected by it. So, as well as the ones that currently don't have access to that because their holiday isn't named. So it was my concern that we have some way to address those concerns. So I wanted to know what the will of the committee was, if, to send that forward before I voted.
and I think that just as last month, is that policy development can come from anyone who brings it to us, and then it's the policy subcommittee to decide how to take it on. So I look at this as Lynn asking us to look at a subsequent policy that would go hand in hand with this, take this policy in consideration, but also take care of the homework, the testing, and, even looking at the sports, that type of thing. So that would be I don't know how we do the sports, but I know homework and testing you could do through a policy. And as Kathleen said, that's on a policy.
That's probably a do. It doesn't sound like you really need the will of the committee. It sounds like if you want to bring this to the subcommittee, then, we discuss it there and then find out.
It sounds like we have a wonderful plan. I trust our superintendent is going to gather some good data, is going to make sure that K to 8 there's coordination there, that all religions and all students, their religious beliefs should be respected, and they're not to be penalized when they come back. I'm quite confident that our superintendent can help us after she accumulates that data, and then it could go to a policy subcommittee to review.
So Lynn, thank you for bringing that to attention, which will go back to the policy subcommittee. And you're a vital part of that, so we look forward to your involvement and the information that Christine's going to do. Okay? All right. So then we have a motion on the table by Paul, seconded by Dan, to accept school calendar I-100 as presented, the second reading. All those in favor of the motion on the table? And it passes unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for the wonderful questions and also the dialogue and conversation. Thank you, Lynn, very much. Next item that we have is audience sharing. Any audience? We'll go with our audience out there. Administration, Christine.
I do have something very important to share with you. I think some of you may have had an opportunity to read this afternoon. And it's, when we look forward to sharing, we always look forward to sharing good news, and I'm happy for the recipient of the potential opportunities that this presents for him, but I also am saddened and really find myself at a loss at this point, other than to say that after 8 years of outstanding educational leadership as principal of Algonquin Regional High School, Thomas Mead has announced his retirement as of June 30th, 2017. As superintendent of schools, I extend our most sincere gratitude and appreciation for Principal Mead for his tireless dedication and commitment to all students and to our school community. One of his many commendable qualities is his excellence in advocating for all students and his belief that each student's potential is without limitation. Mr. Mead has created a school culture that is welcoming and student-centered. Please join me in celebrating Mr. Mead's professional accomplishments as principal and wishing him all the best in his personal endeavors. And it has been an honor and a privilege to work with you, Tom, over these last 6 years.
Thank you, Christine. I would like to say, if I could, that it has been my great pleasure to work with this group of people here. This school committee has been outstanding in its support for our students here at the school, and all of our students. And that's certainly been manifest in tonight's lengthy session here, where we heard from a lot of different aspects of the school that don't always get the notoriety and don't always get the headlines, but they're vital. They're vital to helping our kids and keeping them on track and boosting them when they need a little bit of help. So it's a very mixed feeling that I have about today and the announcement. And as I said to the staff this afternoon, I look forward to finishing this year on a high note for the school and for the sake of our students. And you know, I couldn't be working with a better group of people, and that's across the board. That includes this committee, it includes my senior administrators, and of course the faculty and staff. So thank you again for your undying support for Algonquin.
Any comments? Tom, I'd like to thank you. I can't believe it's 8 years. I really can't, but your legacy will go on for numerous of years of all the things that you have done. As serving on a school committee for such a long time, you have changed the culture and this building to the highest that it's ever been in esteem. All your hard work, all your dedication. I remember, and I said once before at another meeting, I knew that the superintendent preceding you had selected a excellent principal when it was the Apple Fest parade, and I think it was your first year. And walking down at the end of the parade, noticed you standing outside of the Northborough Pizza, and in your back pocket you had an Algonquin hat. And it was one thing to be there, but it was another thing to be a supporter, and I knew then that you're an integral part of this school community, and that just showed it right then. So hats off to you. Thank you for everything from the bottom of my heart, because you have big footprints that are going to be hard to fill, but your legacy will be here. And I know that the school culture, the way the students feel about this place, and they feel that they are valued, is because of what you have done. And thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. And I'm sure this is only the beginning of new and wonderful adventures for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Anyone else? Kathleen?
So I've never known an Algonquin without Tom Mead. But my first, and I think I didn't even have kids here yet, but my first year on school committee, I decided to watch the graduation ceremony on TV without having a kid graduating. But the thing, and if there is such a thing as a Tom Mead highlight reel, then I hope you have it someplace, because I don't even know what the what the occasion was, but at one point, the entire auditorium of kids, the kids, just lost their mind and gave you a standing ovation after your first year here at Algonquin. And that really moved me. That showed what an incredible impact you've had here and continue to have had 8 more years later. Amazing.
Lynn?
Thank you, Kathleen.
So my son was a senior, Tom's first year, and I know he made an effort to get to know each one of those seniors because he was only going to have 1 year with them. So, I mean, just that's the story. Just thinks about, he wanted to have that impact, get to know all those kids because he wasn't going to have as much time with them, and it just says a lot. And and it was shown in their graduation that they really appreciated that time and effort that you took to get to know them.
Thank you.
Dan?
So, Mr. Mead, I also have not known an Algonquin without you, and it's going to be strange next year when you're not here. It seems like you are everywhere. So, and I've commented about this before. You're at athletic events. You're at events that are taking place here at the school. I've been to things, and there you are again. And I don't know how you do it and how you have that amount of energy, other than a love for the work you do and the students that you that you help lead through this incredible institution. Your work ethic is absolutely incredible. You are personable, you are professional, and that's a combination not often seen, and you're going to be greatly missed. But thank you for all that you've done for all of us and all the kids here.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, going on now to anything else from administration and audience sharing? I was coming around. So Patty?
I just wanted to share that I'm not going to be seeking re-election for my seat on this committee, which my term will be up this May. But hopefully that there will be other interested members of the community willing to step up. And papers are currently available at Northborough Town Hall.
So Patty, I'd like to thank, this is a shock. Didn't expect this one. I would just like to thank you for your dedication. First got to know you as a Northborough K-8 member, and since you did a wonderful job, I know we'd always say, Patty, go to the region, come to the region with us. It's great, you'll be on the union, you'll never know what every night is going to be taken. And you did a wonderful job. It is, isn't it? And when you don't think it's being taken, it is. You've served on so many wonderful committees. You served as chairperson several years in Northborough, and I think you had the region and you had the union. So you have left all of the members of the Northborough-Southborough community in such wonderful hands, and really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And it was a pleasure to get to know you and to also learn from you. So thank you very much.
I'll still be on Northborough.
Oh,
so
good.
You'll see me at combined.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Not this committee.
Just the region.
So it's semi-retirement.
Okay, any other news? Anybody have happy news? Somebody have a joke? Okay, thank you very much for the audience sharing and dedication to this position, Patty, that you don't get paid, and Mr. Mead, you don't get paid enough for your position. If only we had $1 million. Okay, so we're on to the personnel distribution of your report that's in your packets. Communications, none at this time. Approval of bills and payrolls, which Cheryl has, that'll be coming around. Agenda items for next month is the superintendent's FY18 recommended budget, and does anybody have anything else? We may have, do you think we may have a policy meeting? Do we may have any updates too, and try to get one in between then?
We're minus a week.
Oh, that's
But
right.
we might.
Okay. Maybe there's a
Always
possibility.
optimistic.
Anyone have anything else they'd like to add for agenda items for next month? And if you do, always know you can send an email to the superintendent or myself if you'd like to. At the bottom of the agenda, we have the next meeting, which will be February 15th, right before winter vacation, and also that we have to put on your calendars combined school meeting of March the 15th. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion. Paul?
Move that we adjourn tonight's meeting of the Northborough Southborough Regional School Committee.
I will second that.
And we have the second half of this duo of the Paul and Dan duo. It has been motioned and it's been seconded, and it is just by raising hands. All those in favor of adjourning? Thank you very much.